I'd like to say thank you for all the support that you guys have given me, and a special thanks for all the guys who have donated to help try to keep the Black history alive here in Houston, which is Black Houstonian Historical Society Incorporated. And what can we say? We're doing the history of one of the most important places in Houston, Texas. The historical high school stadium that it was once called when it was first built in 1942. In 1940, HISD bought 59 acres of land on the outskirts of 3rd Ward, right next door to the University of Houston, and named it the High School Stadium. And the most popular name for the high school stadium would probably be in the 1950s. And in 1942, when they built the stadium, it was built for the black high schools here in Houston and the white high schools here in Houston. We only had 3 high schools at that particular time: Yates, Wheatley, and Booker T. Washington. And the black schools would play Monday and Tuesday, and the white school would play Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Okay, now, and then on the weekend would be Saturday. TSU would play their home games there at that stadium. And the facility was not only a good stadium that was historical made here in Houston. First of all, by the Houston Oilers. And when the Houston Oilers came to town, this is where they won the first championship game and only championship that Houston football team ever won. And it was here in Houston, right there at Jefferson Stadium, 1960, the Houston Oilers versus the Los Angeles Chargers. And also a historical mark because it was the place where we all knew as our Turkey Day Classic, the game between Yates and Wheatley. But let's go back to see the big parking lot that a lot of people have forgot. A lot of black people in 3rd Ward, that's where we learned how to drive, in that big parking lot you see right there. And it was a place that you can learn how to drive. You could drive all the way in that parking lot, all the way from, really, might as well say, from Wheeler all the way back to Holman. You could drive on both sides, on the Scott side and the Cullen side. So it was a good place, especially for 3rd Ward in the 1940s. And the most popular street was Holman. Holman was so popular that they built the first elementary school that we knew before we knew a Lucky. It was Blackshaw, built in 1910, when they first started building on Holman and blacks started coming to 3rd Ward. And that's where Blackshaw was built. And then 17 years later, they built the first and only black hospital, which was Negro General Hospital, and it was located on Holman. And in 1940, they put that stadium. Today, it's still located at 3874 Holman Street. Even though University of Houston got it, but they still left the historical address of 3874 Holman. And as we look at this stadium, and especially me, I got so many good memories at this stadium because this is where I started working, holding the chain gang. And I started working in 1957, Thanksgiving game. And at the time I started working, it wasn't but 3 schools: Yates, Wheatley, in Booker T. Washington. But the next year, I was working full-time at the stadium on the chain game. And they added 2 more schools in 1958. And that was Worthing and Cashmere. And how well I remember the coaches. Over at Jack Yates, it was Coach Pat Patterson. Over there at Phyllis Wheatley, it was Frank Walker. And over there at Ebony Worthing, it was Coach John Tankersley, Sr. And over at Booker T. Washington, it was Coach Sims. And over there at Cashmere, they first coached Coach Billy Matthews. That's right, Mr. Billy Matthews was the first coach over at Cashmere High School, and later he became the first NFL black assistant coach under Coach Bill Walsh and won him 3 Super Bowl rings. Coach Billy Matthews finished from Phyllis Wheatley 1948 and went to coach over there at Cashmere. Dr. Ira Bryant hired him to coach over there at Cashmere, which was the first principal over there at Cashmere. But at this stadium here, some of the famous people have came through here in their schools. Some of the outside schools that came to Jefferson Stadium, because in 1958, not only did they add 2 more schools, black schools, but they also bought a brand new Jack Yates to 3703 Sampson, and they moved Booker T. Washington out of Fourth Ward and moved it out to Studewood in 1958. So you got 4 new schools in 1958. Yates, 3703 Sampson, Worthing out there at 4900 Belford, and then you had Cashmere out there on Hurst Road and Kelly. And you had the new Booker T. Washington out there on 39th Street. And they all played right there at Jefferson Stadium. And one thing about Jefferson Stadium and the high schools that played there, not only did they have good football games there, but they also had good track meets at that same stadium. And one of the best coaches over at Texas Southern that coaches the U.S. Olympic team, Coach Stan Wright. See, some of these people didn't get their recognition. And Coach Stan Wright and the TSU Relays would be there at Jefferson Stadium, where you had all the good high schools across the state of Texas would participate in the TSU Relays. And other schools that came to play at Jefferson Stadium that was not in Houston was such great schools as Charleston Paula of Beaumont, the Hebert out of Beaumont. Also, you had Central out of Galveston. And we had another big rivalry with Port Arthur Lincoln. And then we had a team out in San Antonio. It was called San Antonio Wheatley. And we had 2 teams in Dallas that would also come there to play at Jefferson Stadium. They had Madison of Dallas and they had Lincoln of Dallas. They all would play, and all of these are black schools. But in 1958, when they added the 2 schools, the 2 black schools, onto the schedule, they gave blacks Wednesday. So blacks had Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday to play. And the white kids would play Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I mean Thursday and Friday. I'll take that back, because on Saturday, TSU would play their home games there. The big rivalry between TSU and Grambling started right there. The big rivalry between TSU and Prairie View started right there at Jefferson Stadium. And what can we say about the Turkey Day game between Yates and Wheatley, the north side and the south side? What can we say about it? It started right there at Jefferson Stadium. And one thing about Jefferson Stadium, because in 1960, Mr. Bud Adams brought professional sports to Houston, and it was called the Houston Oilers, and they played there at Jefferson Stadium. I was so blessed to work for Mr. Bud Adams and the Houston Oilers as the first water boy. God has been good to me. That's why I am chosen to do this job. It ain't my prerogative to do this. It's just God has chose me to do this. And it's even that much better because people enjoying the experience that God gave me to share with them. And right there was the beginning of the AFL. Today we know it as the AFC. But back in 1960, the AFL was not part of the NFL. And Mr. Bud Adams, Houston Oilers, played there at Jefferson Stadium. And they won the championship in 1960, right there in 3rd Ward. And was the only time they ever won a championship here in Houston. Because the other time they won it in 1961, they won it up in Los Angeles. But in 1963, they played another AFL championship game, but they lost to the Dallas Texans. And some of you who don't know who the Dallas Texans is, they moved out of Dallas and moved to Kansas City, so they are the Kansas City Chiefs today. And the Texans took on the name, so now you got the Houston Texans today. They took the name and bought the name from Mr. Hunt. Now that's some history for you. But as we talk so much about this stadium and what it meant to 3rd Ward and what it meant to Houston, Texas, and what it meant to blacks all over the city of Houston, because this was the place, Thanksgiving, Turkey Day game was the time where all the blacks come together and have fun and watch a good football game between Yates and Wheatley, a good rivalry game, as we know it as the North Side versus the South Side. And to see this historical spot of 3874 Holman is still existing today, but the University of Houston has it as their stadium today. But the historical landmark of what we're looking at is part of our history in 3rd Ward. And so much history it brought us here in 3rd Ward. Because other places and other parts of the city would have to come here to watch their football games. All the other wards would have to come to 3rd Ward to watch their football games. Because this is where the black high schools would play their games at. The black high schools that was part of Houston Independent School District. See, a lot of we had black high schools that wasn't 4A schools, and they were small schools such as BC Elmo, which was in the Northwood Forest School District. And you had Fidelity Manor, that was also in the North Forest, that was in Galena Park. Then you had schools such as Aldine Carver, which was part of the Aldine district. But Aldine did play their football games with the Houston Independent School District. And out there they was called Aldine Carver. They also played their games there, but they didn't play their home games there. Only home games that were played there at Jefferson Stadium was Houston Independent School District schools. That's it. And the other teams that would come there, they would be visiting teams. But the stadium was such more to 3rd Ward. And then in the back of the stadium, so you got 59 acres. And in the back of the stadium, they had another facility to play basketball for the high school there. Now, only somebody played basketball in the gym back there was the black high schools, and they didn't start playing until 63. Because before 63, the black high schools, even the white high schools, would play their game at their own school gymnasium. But in 1962, a problem came down between Yates, Cashmere, and Wheatley. And that was when they had a big fight and the school got tore up. And the superintendent wanted to make sure that they would not damage any more school property, so they moved everything over to the Houston, which was Jefferson Stadium. They moved it to their gym. So all the high school basketball games would be played at the gym at the 3874 Holman Street. They had a gym in the back. And also had a baseball field back there. That 59 acres of land, HISD utilizes to help all the young people, especially blacks, to become better men. Because that's mainly who used that facility was boys. Boys played football there. Boys ran track there, but they did have girls participating. They did have girls participating in the track meets. But boys played basketball there. At the time, girls did not have a basketball team. It was a boys' team. So all the facility was made for helping young black boys, because the white kids did not play baseball there. The only thing the white kids did at Jefferson Stadium was play football. That was it. Basketball, baseball was made for us, the blacks. The white kids had their own school that had a big baseball field and they had a big gymnasium. So they didn't have to come there to play. But Jefferson Stadium is part of our history here in Houston. And so much it did for Third Ward. It was here before TSU.